This is Lesson 13 of Introduction to Biblical Hebrew. It goes with Lesson 13 of Kittel and Hoffer's Biblical Hebrew textbook. This is arguably one of the most important lessons we've had so far this semester, as we're going to be learning the forms of the Cal affix. Here's our sentence for this lesson. So the first question, as always, is how do we pronounce? The first, almost this whole thing actually is quite familiar to us. So, Vayomer, Hinani, Ki, Karata, Li. Vayomer, Hinani, Ki, Karata, Li. Alright, now almost everything in this sentence we already recognize. Vayomer, of course, is our old friend, the first thing we learned in the class, meaning and he said, Cal, prefix vav conversive of Amar. This is Hinani, which we've seen a lot recently. This is Hine, behold, or jazz hands, plus ni, meaning me. So here I am, or behold, me. Here's our particle ki. In this case, ki seems to mean for. And then the last word, li, simply the lamed preposition plus the first common singular object suffix, so li, to me. So if we move all those into place, then our sentence, and he said, here I am for something to me. So this is the word that we have left, karata, and that is the word that is going to require some work. Alright. So what we have here is a verb, and the question is, how do we parse the verb? Now, if you took the ta ending off of this verb, you would actually have a vocabulary word that we know, kara. So the root here is kara, which means to call or to proclaim. Without that ending of the ta, if it's just kara, it would be he called or he proclaimed. Now the stem is cal, and we'll talk about that a little further in a minute, but it's indicated by those vowels under the kof and the resh. The form, well, it doesn't have a prefix, and it does appear to have an affix, so we have the affix, cal affix of kara. And then the person, gender, and number. This is something that we do not know. So, let's take a look. What we're interested in is what this ta is going to mean. But in the process, we'll learn the other affix endings as well. So, in order to figure out what our form is, we'll look at the affix endings of the affix form of verb. Now, it's important to realize that the affix ending are the same in all of the stems. So once you've learned this little chart, which only has 10 boxes in it, then you will be able to form the affix in the cal, the pl, the hifil, the nifal, the hitpile, the hofal, the pual, and so on. So this little chart will do a great deal of work for you in translating Hebrew. Now you already know the third masculine singular ending. We've been learning it in vocab for quite a while. That ending is blank affix. There is no ending. So this is the form you learn in your lexicon. The third feminine singular ending is a. The blank circle there indicates the third root radical of whatever your root is. So this is just a comet's hay that attaches to the end of the root. The second masculine singular ending is ta. Tav. You see the little bow tie there under the tav, indicating that it's second masculine. This is to distinguish it from the second feminine, which has the little pearls there. So t, or just t. So ta, t. And then the first common singular is t. So here you have the second masculine, second feminine, first common, all with tav. Masculine has the bow tie, feminine has the pearls. And T has the first common singular, what looks like the first common singular object suffix. We've been seeing that all along. So the singular then is blank, a, ta, ta, ti. Now the plural, the third masculine singular plural, you have already learned. It is simply an u attached to the end. You've been doing this for several weeks now, shamaru and so on. The third feminine plural ending is exactly the same. It's an u attached. Instead of distinguishing masculine and feminine, you will often see simply one will say the third common plural. That is, the verb doesn't indicate whether it's masculine or feminine. Knowing whether the subject is masculine or feminine then simply depends on the context. Second masculine plural, tem. Again, that im, as we've seen before, represents masculine. This distinguishes it from the feminine ten, which indicates not masculine. And then our first common plural is nu. Notice that the first common plural nu looks kind of like the third common plural u, and so you have to keep track of the fact that the nun is an additional letter to the root. Normally it will be fairly obvious. So the plurals then, u, tem, ten, nu. So our whole paradigm, blank, a, ta, ta, ti, u, tem, ten, nu. Okay, so let's see what we can do once we know these endings. Alright, so now that we know our endings, we can look at the cal. So this is the first of the many things you can do now that you know the endings. So the cal affix, strong, we can use our friend pakad. Remember that the dogish in the pay there is simply dogish leni because it's the first root letter and it's bagad kafat. So that doesn't have anything at all to do with the cal affix. It's simply a quirk of the root starting with a pay. So you've learned this form before. It has a blank ending, pakad, third masculine singular affix. He visited. Here's the third feminine. You see our affix there. The comments under the dalet is added, and then the hey. So pakada, pakada, she visited. Here we see the second masculine singular. There's our ta ending. So ta. Now notice also that the accent has retracted to the second syllable. So here we have pakadta, pakadta. Here we have the second feminine singular with her pearls. This looks kind of funny here at the end, having two schwas hanging off. The first one is silent, following a patak. The second one is vocal. So pakad, pakad. The schwa there at the end is very, very soft. It's muttered, but you hardly hear it. So pakad. The first common singular then adds our t ending, and also the accent has retracted, so you get pakadti, pakadti. So here you have the cal affix singular, starting with a masculine blank, a, ta, ta, ti, or pakad, pakada, pakadta, pakadta, pakad, pakadti. Alright, the plural, pakadu, we just add our u ending. We've seen this before. The feminine will look exactly the same, pakadu. The second masculine plural, we add this tem ending. This is a heavy ending which pulls the accent all the way to the end of the word and causes a vowel change, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So this becomes pekadtem, pekadtem. Then the feminine looks the same, but with a nun, not masculine. Pekadten, pekadten. And then the first common plural, pekadnu, pekadnu. So here we have our plural endings, u, tem, ten, nu, or pakadu, pakadu, pekadtem, pekadten, pekadnu. The whole paradigm, pakad, pakada, pakadta, pakad, pakadti, pakadu, pakadu, pakadtem, pakadten, pakadnu. So this is what the cal looks like. Simply pakad, stick on the endings. Now, you do not need to know all of, but one can simply do the same thing with the PL. So you know the PL, pikade, is the strong form, dagesh natav, EA vowel pattern. Then if you add the endings, pikada, pikadta, pikad, pikadti, pikadu, pikadu, pikadtem, pikadten, pikadnu. So knowing the third masculine singular, you could get pretty close to working out the PL affix, and you certainly ought to be able to recognize the PL affix when you see it, even though we haven't studied it yet. Here's our endings, the same ones from the cal. And so you have blank atata ti utem ten nu, just stuck onto the end of the PL form instead of the cal form. We could also, of course, do the hifil. So you know the hifil starts with a hey addition to the beginning plus the hierarchiot in the middle. So hifkid, hifkida. We lose the hierarchiot in the middle in these forms, but still recognizable as hifil. Hifkadta, hifkad, hifkadti, hifkidu, hifkidu, hifkadtem, hifkadten, hifkadnu. Here you see the same endings. Once again, just put on to the third masculine singular hifil form, hifkid. Couple vowel changes here and there, but recognizable. You could do the same thing in the nifal. So you know our nifal is nifkad. So nifkada, nifkadta, nifkad, nifkadti, nifkadu, nifkadu, nifkadtem, nifkadten, nifkadnu. Here again, same endings. They are just added to nifkad instead of pakad. And of course, you could do the hit pael, which you know is hit pakade. So hit pakada, hit pakadta, hit pakad, hit pakadti, hit pakadu, hit pakadu, hit pakadtem, hit pakadten, hit pakadnu. Here again, our endings, atata ti utem ten nu, just attached to the third masculine singular hit pakade. Now, all of this stuff at the end, these additional stems, you do not need to know right now, but I do want you to see how much you now know simply by having learned the third masculine singular of the stems and learned the affix. In the strong form, you can recognize almost everything. Let's look a little more closely at the form of the cal affix, which is our task for today. Now, the cal affix you have seen before. It is indicated by this comment in the first syllable. In our old friend pakad, you see the comments there. You also see it in the third feminine, second masculine, second feminine, and first common singular, as well as the third common plural and the first common plural. Now, you will notice that in the second masculine singular and second masculine plural and second feminine plural, you do not have a comment in the first syllable, but rather you have a schwa. Now, the reason for this is about the location of the accent. So, pakad, the accent is on the second syllable. Here, pakada, pakadta, the accent has retracted to the second syllable. Pakad, pakadti, pakadu, pakadu, and pakadnu. So in all of these cases, the accent is on the syllable just following the comments, and so the comments remains intact. So in all of these cases, you have a comment. However, in our other forms, we have what is called a heavy affix, the tem and the ten. They look heavy because they are multiple letters, and they function as heavy affixes in that they draw the accent of the word all the way down to the propretonic syllable. So this is the reason for the reduction of the comments in these two forms. The heavy accent pulls the heavy affix pulls the accent away and reduces the comments. So when you see Pekad Tem and Pekad Ten, you should not be expecting to see the comets there, but a shva. Now, the second characteristic of the cal is this a class vowel in most of the forms of the verb. So in these 7 forms, you see that we have the patak in the second syllable. So we have our a vowel pattern. There are 3 cases, though, when we don't have a patak, but instead we have a shva. Now the question is, what do these 3 have in common? Well, the answer to what they have in common is that they have affixes which are, in fact, vowels. So pakada is simply the kamate mater, and then pakadu and pakadu is the shurek mater. So what's happened here then is that when the affix is a vowel, then the characteristic vowel in the second syllable, the a, will reduce to a shva. When the affix is starts with the consonants ta, ta, te, tem, ten, nu, in these cases it remains the full. So just to review the cal affix strong, we have pakad, pakada, pakadta, pakad, pakadti, pakadu, pakadu, pakadtem, pakadten, pakadnu. One variation of the cal affix is the first guttural. This one is actually quite regular, but let's look. So we can use as our example halach. Of course, gutturals are anything beginning with hey, chet, ayin, or aleph. So here we have halach, halacha, halachta, halacht, halachti. So far entirely regular. Halachu, halachu, halachtem. Here we see the variation here. We also see it with halachten. This is simply that the shva of pekadtem, which is a simple shva, has become in the guttural a patak shva. This is because, of course, gutturals prefer a patak-rich environment. Then the final form is halachnu. So first guttural, entirely regular in everything but the 2 masculine and 2 feminine plural. And the only variation then is that the shva becomes a patak shva. Slightly more complicated is the third aleph cal affix. So before we had first guttural, now we're having third aleph. This is specific to the aleph and not to the other gutturals. So there are 3 rules that we can follow for third aleph roots. First of all, aleph will lengthen the vowel before it. Second, aleph eliminates the dagesh in the affix endings. And third, we don't write shva under the aleph in the affix form. So let's look at the paradigm of the cal affix in the third aleph and see how these rules play out. Here's our first form, which is familiar to us from vocabulary. Kara, he proclaimed. Here's kara'a, karata, karat, karati, kara'u, kara'u, karatem, karaten, karanu. Alright, notice that we expect in the strong form that this vowel here would be a patak, like in pakad. But here, instead of a patak, it is a comet. That's because of our first rule that aleph tends to lengthen the vowel in front of it. So in all of the cases where we would have had a patak before, we have a comet instead. So this is the first way that this paradigm of the third aleph is modified from the strong root. Second, we notice that in the forms where we would expect a shva under the aleph, we do not have a shva under the aleph. The aleph, this is a quiescent aleph, which we've seen before. It is closing the syllable by itself, and it does not need a shva to do so. So this is the second rule. Then the third rule is about the loss of the dagesh in the affixes. So here in all of the tav affixes, we have lost our dagesh. So we have spiranted tav following the aleph. Now, if you encountered one of these forms in the wild, you would probably recognize it fairly easily. The harder thing is producing the form, which is an important thing to be able to do, but is not key to being able to read Hebrew. So this brings us back to our form from our sentence, which was karata. Now you can recognize the root kara, the stem kal, the form affix, and the person, gender, number, indicated by our ta, which we have just seen, second masculine singular. No special features. So if we translate you called. If we bring the rest of our sentence back, then Vayomer hineni ki karatali. Then we have this, which can be translated. And he said, "Here I am, for you called to me," or "for you called me." This is what Samuel says to Eli in the story of Samuel being called by God. Vayomer hineni ki karatali, and he said, "Here I am, for you called to me." Okay, so you have now just learned all the forms of the kal affix. You also have a good sense of how you're going to recognize and form the PL, Hifil, Nifal, and Hitpile affix, although we will not get to those until later. There are a few weak forms of the kal affix, particularly middle weak roots and roots that end in hay, third hay roots, and we will encounter those forms later on. For now, good job with the kal. You have quite a few exercises actually to do in the book, forming conjugations and whatnot, and translating sentences. And also, today we will begin actually translating Genesis chapter 22. So your assignment is Genesis 22, 1 and 2.